Steve is back with us tonight, fresh off of his performance. We'll put it that way. His performance on Monday. How are you feeling there, champ?
I am feeling good. I have had my coffee. I'm invigorated. I walked 2 miles today. Yes.
Feeling spunky.
Yes, I feel good. Spunky today. I'm ready for this.
Let's say a quick hello to Mr. Terrance Popp. Mr. Popp, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Boom, beer me.
Tonight's gonna be fantastic. I can already tell. We were talking briefly before the show, and I think this is gonna be a show to see, no doubt. Before we get into it, I've got, as always, just a couple quick announcements to let you guys know what's coming up. On Saturday, we haven't had a flat Earth debate in a while, and I know that you guys have been itching for one, so we're gonna satisfy that on Saturday. Dr. John Kroon, who is can't even think.
He's an astrophysicist.
Yes, astrophysicist. Sorry, I was looking at my other notes. He will be talking to The Plain Truth, who also runs a podcast called Revelation in Revelation. So that will be Saturday at 8. On that following Tuesday, David Packman will be with us. We'll be having a discussion on the death penalty and whether it should be abolished or not. And then Friday, you guys have been asking for a climate change discussion that will take place on next Friday. That will be with Dr. Peter Ward. He'll be coming to talk about climate change and if there's anything that can be done to reverse those effects. This Thursday, we are doing another debate roulette. If you are interested in being a part, you can join the Discord and let us know. We will start at 8 p.m. and the topic will be spun. We'll let you decide if you agree with that topic or disagree, and then we will randomly choose 2 people to come in on the fly and debate that for 15 minutes. So that's going to be Thursday at 8. Also, we all know that Red's Rhetoric is in retirement for a little bit. However, he is coming out briefly to have a debate with No Concepts. So, No Concepts, we have been trying to get a hold of you. Reds is ready, and we need to know a date from you, sir. So please get in touch with me so we can set that up. I know that you guys have been waiting for a bit to go after it, and he is ready. So just let me know. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who's going to tell us a little story about how he came across Terrance Popp.
So a couple nights ago, as you guys know, I generally go out and I try to find people to bring them on. And I happened to come across a hangout with these MGTOW people having conversation, and I jumped in the live chat, and they were nice enough to actually invite me in the hangout, and I asked them if any of them wanted to come on and talk about MGTOW, and they actually gave me a name. They said, well, we probably are not that interested, but maybe this guy that we know of called Terrance Popp might be interested. So I reached out to him and I asked him, hey, would you like to come on NonSequitur and have a discussion about MGTOW? And he was definitely receptive of it, and he's here on that. So that's kind of the story how I got in touch with him. So let me introduce him real quick. Terrance Popp has a pretty decent sized channel. I think he has like 60 some odd thousand subs, 30 some odd a year Army veteran, and he owns a domain called. Would you own the domain redonkulous.com?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if you want to go check out his stuff, redonkulous.com, and we'll put that in the video description. But mainly from what I've seen from his videos, you generally dealing with feminism, MGTOW stuff, men's rights, and in a comedic type format, correct?
Yeah. And I do throw a lot of insults around, but it's neither here nor there.
Awesome. And on the other side, we brought in Emrazz here for you to have a conversation with. People might remember her. She's been in before having conversations. She's the feminist next door on Twitter. She talks about racism and male chauvinist and pretend lawyers, if I'm not correct. Is that the case, Emrazz? Right?
Yeah.
By the way, hi, welcome back.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Yeah, so my shtick is basically that I'm your favorite friendly feminist, and I try to talk about issues that affect women and intersectionality. So I do talk about racism. I talk about homophobia, xenophobia, and essentially any cultural issue that intersects with the subjugation of women. So I try to engage people in conversation. I occasionally throw an insult back, but I try not to instigate people. And I try to educate people who have questions about feminism or questions about what feminists think, and just kind of keep the dialogue rolling.
Are you familiar with MGTOW? I mean, you've dealt with them before?
I sure have.
Awesome. So this is going to be great. So kind of, why don't you start us off, Terrance, maybe explain MGTOW to people and why you're a MGTOW person and why you advocate for it. And maybe you can just kind of lead into a conversation with Emrazz organically.
Yeah, you could say I'm red-pilled, and I follow the MGTOW principle. I mean, I'm not, one of those MGTOW monks that just totally swears off women, and so, I mean, I'm not like that. But basically, if you're one of those guys who's been divorced and you say, "Hey, I'm never getting married again," you're there. That's you.
Is that the only criteria?
No, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there who, fall into the MGTOW mindset when they realize there's a lot of crap going on in the world, and it's basically, one-sided against men, and they're like, "Fuck it, I'm not playing," and they take their toys and they're leaving the field to let it.
So it's kind of a response. It's kind of a response
Yeah,
to
it's a
feminism.
response to.
Okay.
I would say in a way, yeah, liberalism and feminism.
Let's
Okay.
ask Emrazz. What are your views on the MGTOW movement, Emrazz?
Well, as I understand it, MGTOW has kind of a couple of different sects, I guess you could call them, or levels of engagement. I think you mentioned one being MGTOW monks, would be people who have sworn off women altogether. I don't know exactly what the names of the various stages of MGTOW are, but the interactions that I've had have ranged from guys who just don't like women and don't want to be around them but still want to fuck them, or guys who really like just being entirely away from women 100%, and have sort of a visceral reaction to any requirement of having involvement with women. So I've interacted with them all on a limited basis. To me, it seems like at the various stages of MGTOW have different, or MGTOW, excuse me, have different goals. So, there may be some men who really are going their own way, but I have not met any of them in MGTOW because they're talking to me. So, that's where I'm at.
Terrance, how would you
So
respond to that?
you're stating that men aren't MGTOW if they talk to you.
Well, I mean, this term is going your own way, right? So you're sort of in my way if you're talking to me, not yours, I guess.
Okay, so if they say hello to you on the street, then they're not MGTOW or anything like
Well, I
that.
think it
Is that
would
what?
be. I think it would be unlikely for me to know that someone was in MGTOW if they just said hello to me on the street. But we're talking about people who are engaging me on a significant level, on Twitter, for example, who are replying back and forth constantly, numerous times, and even when I say, maybe time to go your own way, they still don't. So, in that case, to me, it seems a little antithetical, but I
Hmm.
I guess what I'm saying is, to me, the rebuttal to the characterization of MGTOW as a hateful group or a woman hating group is that we're not that. We're just men trying to do our own thing. And if that's the case, go do it.
Hmm.
That's really kind kind of where I stand.
Well, there are a lot that do that, and there's a lot of them that you know, work at jobs and that where they can just take care of themselves, don't feed into the tax base, and when enough of us men walk off the lot because we pay a large share of the taxes, there's going to be some problems.
What are your
Well,
views
first of all,
of
that's just factually untrue. But the other thing is
Okay.
that I mean that men pay the majority of the tax base. Like that's just factually incorrect. But
Okay.
the the reality is that you can exist in the world and have a perspective that you don't want to interact with women on a social basis and do so. And the fact that I have had numerous conversations with MGTOWs means that they are not doing that because they are having social interactions with me. They also usually detail their sexual exploits with women. So I don't know that I understand specifically what it means to go your own way if you're still trolling women on Twitter and still fucking them on the weekends. Like,
Oh,
which way are
what you're
you
talking
going?
about
Yes, my
are
question.
the pickup artists, because those are the guys who like to pick up a lot of women and bang them and stuff. And they are a level of you know, red pill guys. I wouldn't say they're, you know, 100% MGTOW, but that's probably what you're referring to. Is that what you're saying?
No, I know what pickup artists are. I'm referring to MGTOWs. I mean, you said
Okay.
yourself, right, that you still sleep with women,
let me ask you,
right?
Terrance, what are your views on feminists? How would you categorize? What are your thoughts on feminists?
I am not a fan of feminism at all. I think it's kind of a one-sided ideology, which is basically bent on domination and has done a great job at it thus far.
Emrazz?
I guess I would ask, in what sense do you feel feminism is one-sided?
Well, I didn't really understand how one-sided it was until I went in divorce court and I lost my house. I was left over with like $600 a month to live on after child support. I lost my children. My ex-wife killed my dog, and I wind up living on the street. So that's pretty much one-sided right there.
What you're saying your ex-wife killed your dog because of the social movement for gender equality?
No, my ex-wife killed my dog because I filed for divorce first, and she knew that you know, she wasn't going to get the auto win unless I wrang her neck because she killed my dog, which I didn't do. That's a whole other story. But then when I got to court, I was labeled a murderer and an assassin because you know, I was a Green Beret and a Ranger, and I did all that high-speed stuff in the Army. And then when that didn't work, they used my wounds that I sustained in combat against me to justify taking away my kids. And they basically set my child support based on a business that I didn't own anymore, and basically said, it's okay, you can have it adjusted in 2 years because that's the law. So that was pretty much it for me.
Okay, so then to rephrase, your ex-wife murdered your dog in order to manipulate a system based on gender inequality to your disadvantage, and that was caused by a social movement for gender equality.
Well, the feminism has controlled, you know, the Senate, the House, and
I'm
basically,
sorry,
you know,
what?
they're in charge
Women
of the
represent
VAWA.
20% of Congress.
VAWA, hang on, just listen to me. VAWA, all the child support laws which violate the
Violence against
Constitution of the
women
United
Act?
States. Yeah. So
Is
you're saying like the whole
that
Violence
problematic
Against
for you?
Women Act, you deserve extra you know, extra protections because you got a slot seat between your legs? Come on. You're already protected under the Constitution. Why do you
No,
need
we're not.
more?
The word
Oh,
woman
you're not
appears
protected.
nowhere
You're
in the
not
Constitution.
you are not protected in the Constitution at all.
No.
Oh, there we go, right there. Boom.
I don't know what you're booming
Okay.
about.
Well, let's
Well, you know,
clarify
the
just so everybody's on the same
Constitution
page.
applies to every single citizen of the United States. It doesn't say man or woman. It's, you know, Jesus.
No, it definitely says
Okay, got you.
man.
Oh, okay, all right. So I mean, so vow was totally justified because the Constitution was written by white men. It doesn't apply to women at all, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, you said that women were protected under the Constitution, and I said that's not accurate because we're not.
He means that includes men and women. Like they're both protected under an umbrella
Well, I mean,
of the Constitution.
Correct.
well, they're protected from the government, sure, but not from men. And you're referring to the Violence Against Women Act, which is specifically about domestic violence against women.
And which women are responsible for half the violence in domestic violence cases. So,
well,
there
I
you
mean,
go.
again, that's another non-factual statistic, but I will 100%
All right.
accept that domestic violence against men is a problem and it exists.
What do you what do each of you say when someone draws the comparison and says that you're both just this, you're doing the same thing for your gender? MGTOW is the men's response to feminism. Like, what are the differences there?
Well, at its core, MGTOW is just a logical response to the state of the world. I mean, in regards to the one-sided laws, the destruction of marriage, there's no benefit in it in that regard for men anymore, and a lot of them are just saying fuck it. They're living their life and they're doing their own thing.
And Emrazz?
Well, if the characterization of MGTOW is that men are frustrated about having fewer benefits, then I would argue that feminism is the quest to achieving the same benefits as men have always had. And so, in that way, we're not parallel, but inverse reflections of one
And
another.
what benefit are you speaking of?
Well, I was using your words specifically. You said that
Okay, are
men
you
have no
familiar?
benefits, so they're exiting society.
Are you familiar with risk equals reward? That concept, as they teach it in economics.
Sure.
Okay, well, if you're familiar with that, then you'll realize that 94% of all workforce deaths and maimings happen to men. That's 6% to women. Does that seem like a disparity to you?
Is that
Sure.
a question though? Is that merely because men tend to take more physical jobs?
Well,
Has a higher
men
requirement
take
for
jobs
physical-
that are physical, risky, dirty, and discomfort. The triple D's, and it's not a bra size.
Good one.
All right,
And
Steve.
women don't do that, and then
But that generally is
and then
because
they
of
complain
physical
about how it's
differences,
unfair.
right?
Well,
I
and you
mean,
would say women think there is no differences between men and women because it's a social construct.
is that the case, Emers? Because obviously there's physical differences. I mean, I think in the social movement, when they talk about equality or even better equity, it's that in the eyes of the law, people should be treated the same, correct? Not that there's not any difference between men and women. Clearly, there's some differences.
Yes. Right.
If not, I would be, bisexual, and I'm not. I happen to like women, so there's definitely differences that I'm aware of.
Oh, no one wants to imagine that, Steve.
Yeah, no
No
one
one.
wants to imagine that.
All right.
Let me ask
All
a
right,
quick
Steve.
question. What's the difference between MRA and MGTOW, if you can briefly explain for people?
Men's right activists are groups of men that gather together to actually try to influence policy, laws, and so forth to basically even the playing field now. Where MGTOW guys just say the hell with it, and they're not messing with that at all, and they just leave.
So
You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, no, I got it. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around the MGTOW position. I mean, the feminist movement is generally, and I'm not a feminist either, so let me get out of the way. But the feminist movement generally tries to strive for certain things like equality and equal playing fields. Now, yeah, I understand egalitarianism, and when I talk about feminism, in that regard, I'm egalitarian, but I know modern feminists tend not to do that. They don't like the word egalitarian, from my experience. They go to second and third wave feminists, but by the way, I don't think Emrazz even supports that. But why do men need a very specific movement when historically men have had the advantage? That's just a social fact. I don't think anybody really can deny that. Men have mainly had advantages in history over women and been dominant over women. Would you not agree?
Well, I mean, are we talking the past, or are we talking
historically
since 1950? Historically, men and women are different. Women, historically were looked at to bring on the next generation, which requires a lot of time, effort, and resources. And they stayed home and took care of that while the dudes went out and worked and brought back the money. So, I mean, that's how it worked. If they want to characterize that as domination, then it's kind of one-sided.
Would you say
Emrazz?
that women who don't have a right to vote are dominated by people who do have a right to vote?
Well, I am a big fan. If you want to vote, you need to register for the draft. And if you're not willing to do that, then you shouldn't be able to vote.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you know this, but in 2016, there was a bill that was knocked down by Senate Republicans that didn't allow women to enter the draft, although we did lobby to allow, and it was passed by the House by both parties. So I'm not sure if you know that, but
I know
the reality
now.
is that we were speaking historically,
are
you
you
still haven't
familiar with now?
accepted that men have been privileged through 2 millennia of history, and that women gained the right to vote in the United States less than 100 years ago. So my question is, do you or do you not accept that men have had privilege for the last 2,000 years or more?
I do not accept men have had a privilege for 2,000 years.
What? Why not?
Well, throughout history, men have been doing the dying. Back before the Geneva Convention, when an army of men marched out to war, you won and you lived, or you lost, and every man to the last man was killed. Is that some kind of privilege? I don't think so.
Emrazz?
Well, let me ask you something. If me and a bunch of my girlfriends get together and then we start an argument and start slapping each other, do you have privilege because you weren't invited to the fight? Or is it just that we started a fight with one another and we started slapping one another and you weren't invited?
Well, see, there you go with the one-sidedness of your argument. You're assuming that, at these countries or cultures that went to war, it was all just men. There's men and women in those cultures. Yeah, but there was men and women in those cultures. The women got to stay home and do their deal, and men had to go to war. And a lot of times, back before there was a draft, especially during the feudal times, it was you go or you die. And then if you go and you lose, you still die. Where's the privilege in that? Please give me a break.
But again, isn't that based upon physicality, though? I mean, men historically have been the physically dominant species. That's just something that's a biological thing we can't change.
No. We're the same species. Men and women are the same species.
Yeah, no, I do grab that. Homo sapiens sapien. Yes, I understand that. I'm saying that they are the dominant physically, right? So when you go to war, right now, I'm fine with women in combat. I really am. I have no issue with it whatsoever. If they meet the same stringent conditioning that men have, and we all been through boot camp.
Correct.
Women can do it just as
one
well.
standard.
But of course, there are some. Yeah, and I'm fine with that. There's some modifications. Obviously, there's physical limitations there. But if they can do the requirements set forth that women have the standard, I'm all for that. I believe that they should be able to go to combat if by their choice. But generally, in wartime situation, men are going to be the stronger physically person to dominate the enemy, correct? And especially in historical times. I mean, obviously today we have things like equalizers, like weapons of mass destruction and guns, but back then, 2,000 years ago, it was a lot of more hand in hand with a spear kind of thing, right?
Yeah, but a lot of the war was actually won through maneuvering, which required a lot of running and carrying a bunch of crap. It's still the same today.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that.
Emrazz, you want to follow up on that?
Well, I'm not really sure. I mean, what is the follow up to that? That men are not advantaged because they had to go to war? Is that
Well,
the position?
you're saying that, we're advantaged because we're bigger and stronger, and somehow we're responsible because the creator made us that way. Well, I'm sorry. And also, being a man is not always a good thing. We have to work our asses off. We die on the job. We get sucked into wars. We're maimed. We have a higher percentage of dying on the street. I'm all for women equality, and I want you to get half of that cup, drink half from that cup of expendability that men have for the past 2 millennia. And if you're not willing to do that, then you don't want equality.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that I'm not willing to do that. Again,
Okay.
like
How old are you?
I'm not.
How old are you?
How does it matter?
Yeah, because if you're under 40, go enlist in the United States Army or shut your mouth.
So okay, then let me just backtrack here. Is it,
I'm asking
no, is
you
it,
to put your money where your mouth is, right? Right? And now you're going to
no,
backpedal and do some mumbo jumbo on me, right? Yeah, that's be good.
no, I'm not.
Bring it
It's not
on.
really mumbo jumbo. It's just that what you're saying is that the only value that men add to society is being members of the army, and I feel like most men would disagree with that.
No, but historically, men who went in the military paid the ultimate price.
Well, so do women who go in the military.
Okay. Well, let's see. If you look at the stats, I believe 98% of the killed and wounded since they started keeping those stats in the United States Army is 98% men, 2% women.
Well, women aren't
So
allowed
am
in
I
positions
saying,
of combat, so that makes sense, does it
well,
not? I mean,
they
I also don't really
drive and
understand what this
they
is
fly
relevant to.
helicopters? What are you talking about?
Like,
What do you mean it's not relevant?
relevant how many women died in combat versus men?
Because
Like,
I
what were
want
you
you to
driving?
drink your share from the cup of expendability. And that means moving forward,
Okay,
I
how
would
many
like to
men
see
died in
half of them.
childbirth last year?
I don't know. I don't keep track of that.
How many men were
But
murdered by a domestic partner?
okay, that's a natural function. Are you saying that somehow we
Being
should
murdered by
compare
a
war to
domestic
a
partner is
natural?
a natural
No,
function?
no. You said childbirth before this, right?
Okay.
Is that a natural function? Isn't that the
Well,
primary purpose, or the women are the only ones that can actually do that as of 2018? Correct?
I would disagree
Primary.
with primary purpose, but as far as I
Okay,
know,
then.
women
So
are the only
if women
gender that
stop
can have.
having babies, what happens to the human race?
Well, I mean, theoretically, it
What
would
happens?
die out.
No, no, that's right. It will cease to exist. So that, therefore, to keep everything going, that's a primary purpose, since you're the only ones that can do that. I hope, I pray for the day they make an artificial wound, and then we'll just cut you guys right out of the equation, and that'll be it.
Oh,
Okay.
shit.
I mean, I gotta be honest. I'm kind of having a hard time forming responses to what you're saying because I don't really know like what point you're making. But I guess what
All
I'm
right.
saying is I don't understand why you continue to build a hierarchy of harm where
Oh,
what you're saying
hierarchy of
is,
harm. Okay.
yeah, that's what I said. And you keep saying that you want women to have their fair share, and then you keep noting that men are subject to these various harms, all of which I don't disagree with. I don't think that it's untrue that men die more on the job. I don't think it's untrue that more men have died on the battlefield. Those are factual statements. I think whether or not it matters is certainly something that could be addressed. And also, it seems that you're ignoring the other half of the equation, which is the number of women who die for reasons that are exclusive or pervasively causes of death for women. However, I don't really think it's a necessary conversation to have, because I don't think that number of people dead from various reasons is an indicator as far as social equality. Like, I just don't understand where we're going with it.
Well, let's see. You're saying social equality, and I am trying to tell you that you're saying there's male privilege, but along with these so-called male privileges come the male disprivileges, which usually involve death, maiming, and other horrific outcomes, which women didn't really have to deal with because they were at home taking care of the kids and running the household and do the historically what women used to do.
So your suggestion is just that, like, during feudal times, women were just like kind of lounging around, like nursing their babes
Oh no.
and like sitting on the couch.
Everyone, no. Everyone had their role, and they played their role,
Including
and it
being
worked out
raped
really
and
good
murdered,
because
like
we're
an
here right
ethnic
now.
rape.
It worked out real good
Yeah,
because we're here right now.
I don't
But
know
guess
any
what?
male that's
Since
ever died by giving childbirth.
1955.
By the
No.
way.
Well, it all depends
women
if
do,
men are women and women are men. Now you have the he him persons and the shimps. So who knows what can happen nowadays?
Okay, dude.
Let me ask you this, because this was brought up when I went to that one hangout, and it goes to the social norms here. They were saying along the lines that they're not the MGTOW weren't advocating to take away the right to vote for women, but they believe that they should have never been given the right to vote to begin with. Do you believe that?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, unless they're willing to be drafted. Then yeah, no, they should. They're getting that for free. And if you're a dude and you don't sign up for the selective service at 18, you're looking down the barrel of a felony. And then you can't
So is that the only
apply for any federal jobs.
Well, unless you join the military,
regard-
you don't have to. But I mean, is that the contingent thing that if to be given the right to vote, that you have to register for selective service? Because I don't remember that being a condition in the 19th Amendment. Correct? You're just advocating that it should be, right?
No. I believe that it is a crime to not sign up for selective service.
Right, but I mean, what I'm asking you is, you are saying that it should be a contingent upon selective service if somebody is given the right to vote or not, and then it would include women.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, Emrazz, what do you think about that? That women shouldn't be given the right to vote unless they because I don't see how that's a right at that point.
Yeah,
Or
well,
liberty.
I mean, I think there's kind of a micro response to this and a macro response. The micro response is that, again, women have lobbied for the ability to sign up for selective service as part of their lobby to be allowed combat positions in the military. And they were denied that ability by a Congress that is 80% male. So to say that women are not signing up for selective service because they don't want to is a mischaracterization. It's just not true. If I wanted to sign up for selective service, I am not legally allowed to. So that doesn't seem like a reasonable stipulation as far as my voting rights if I am not legally permitted to do what you're telling me I should be doing. So that's the micro. The macro is what is the societal good that you feel is being provided by signing up for selective service that justifies the right to vote that is not being achieved if you don't sign up for selective service?
Well, if you are writing a check to the government up to that could include your very life and soul, you probably have more of a stake in regards to what you're voting for. Let's see.
Okay,
And,
so if the case is that risking your life for the benefit of the greater good or the country is what justifies the ability to vote, then what would you say to your own mother and every other woman who had who went through childbirth to create every citizen of this country? Have they not also put their lives at risk? More so, certainly, than someone who signed up for selective service and never actually was drafted, which is everyone since
okay.
19. What,
So we're
that's
we're
60.
falling back onto a natural function to justify this. Is that what you're saying? That
Oh, no,
somehow
what I'm
women giving
saying is
birth
that
is identical to signing up for the draft.
well, what you
Is
said
that what you're saying?
was
Is that what you're saying?
writing
No,
a
no,
check with your life is what justifies a
you're absolutely
vote.
correct.
And my
And
response was,
if you
I'm
want
not
to,
legally allowed to be drafted. So if I'm going to sign a check for my life, then I'm going to have to do it somehow else since I'm legally prohibited from using your route. So if I'm
well, then
having
if they should
children,
make it,
am I
then
not
they should
also
make it
signing
equal.
a check?
If you want to vote, you gotta have 3 kids. That way you're above the replacement rate. There we go.
Let me ask this question. What is the end game with the MGTOW movement, Terrance? What is the like the goal in the end in the long run?
A large majority of these guys just want to be left alone. That's a large large majority of them. They want to live their lives, do their deal, and then at the end lay down and take their dirt nap. And then there's
Can
a
they
lot
not
of
do that?
other ones. No, well, they're doing it now, but there's a lot of other ones who are walking away, not paying taxes because they want to see the system fall. And when the money dries up, it will fall.
So you don't think that women pay anywhere near the amount in taxes that men do?
I am actually looking for that stat right now, so
Okay.
I would say no.
Emrazz, let me ask you a question while we look for that stat, because I am interested to see what the differences are in that, because I don't know myself. But Emrazz, there was a thing on Twitter the other day that got a couple people. It was a heated discussion, and I think it's worth asking here to see where we come up with. But let's say that I believe this was a thought experiment, if I remember reading correctly, but they were talking about having men be on a curfew at 9:30 so that women could come and go at night without fear of being attacked or stalked or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't think, I don't think that anyone should be subjected to any prohibition or regulation on the basis of their gender.
Indeed.
Okay.
Let me ask something to follow up on that. There was a group of feminists that once advocated that certain things like football, if anybody on that football team was even accused of sexual misconduct in any way, whether they were guilty or not, didn't matter. They were required to write an apology letter. Are you familiar with that, Emrazz?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Okay. Would you reject or endorse something along those lines? That if a man is even accused of something along the lines of sexual misconduct, they would have to write an apology letter without any trial, without any evidence or anything of that nature, because that has been advocated by feminists before. And I've talked to MGTOW, the group that I was in, about something along those lines, and they are very much against that. Would you agree that that is something that's not something that a feminist should adopt, that kind of policy?
I would reject that.
Okay.
Hmm.
See,
I don't
common
think I don't
ground.
think it I don't think it would be appropriate to have someone be held accountable and certainly be forced to take active engagement in their accountability if there's no evidence that, and I say evidence not in the criminal trial sense, but if there's no opportunity, I should say, for them to present their own version of facts and be heard. I mean, I think there's a tendency in our society to move discussions about sexual assault and assault allegations exclusively into criminal terms because it's an uncomfortable topic for us to address because of the potential harm to an assault victim if they are not believed, and the potential reputational damage to an accused if they're falsely accused. And those are uncomfortable things for us. So we lean very heavily on the criminal justice system because we feel like if we can rely on the DA and the PD to work this out and through due process, then we can sort of check out until the end of the trial, and whatever the result is what was fair. And I think in the situation that you're describing, the dynamic is less about whether you should be forcing someone to apologize for something that potentially they didn't do. The correct feminist perspective would be to support someone who alleges sexual assault, and to the extent possible, move that complaint into the criminal justice system, but holding someone accountable or subjecting them to punishment without the opportunity to respond is not appropriate.
I have something. Let's go to Terrance now. What are your thoughts on because this is sort of a topical the rape culture. What are your thoughts on in terms of where the burden of proof should be in when you have people that are making allegations of rape?
Oh, well, it should be like it always is. Have a credible story and have evidence, and then the presumption of innocence is, first and foremost until proven guilty in a court of law. There you go.
Would you agree with that, Emrazz?
If you don't follow that, you get a witch hunt.
Would you agree with that, Emrazz?
Well, certainly I agree with due process. I mean, did take an oath, right? But I think, again, it just, there's a tendency to either speak exclusively in terms of the criminal justice system or to conflate this social or sort of neighborhood dynamics of handling accusations versus the criminal trial aspect. Certainly that was something that we struggled with in our most recent shit show, right? Because we weren't in a criminal trial, but we could not resist speaking about the Cavanaugh confirmation in terms of due process, criminality, innocent until proven guilty, although we were absolutely not in a criminal trial setting. So, of
Right.
course, I think that we should adhere to due process. Of course, I think it is absurd to suggest that a DA would come up before a judge, bring forth a charge of rape, and say, this person is guilty. The judge bangs the gavel, and it's over because someone said they did something. That makes absolutely
Sure.
no legal sense. But
I think
I
was meaning more like in the social what do you call it, the public, the court of public opinion, because there's always sort of that you have one half that puts the blame square on the guy that is being accused, no matter if there's evidence or not. And so I'm leaning maybe like what should be the reaction when these allegations come up, but there's no direct evidence. Like which side do you give the woman a little bit more leeway in terms of reasonable doubt because it's something as serious as rape, or how do you handle that?
Well, I think that first we have to recognize that there's a difference between supporting a sexual assault accuser and demonizing a sexual assault accused. So you can choose to believe that someone was sexually assaulted to support them in their claims, to assist them as they work through the process, and not also, um, continuously call the accused a rapist, to demonize them, to publicly declare them guilty. That's certainly possible, and it's what we should do. I think
Hey, gentlemen, give me a minute. Just give me a minute.
Okay.
Sure.
I think, Emrazz, I think you make a great point on that. I actually said the same thing myself. Look, at believing somebody is different than convicting them in a court of law, right? I can hold a belief. For example, I do believe, like Dr. Ford. Somebody was asking him if he actually believed Dr. Ford, and we'll ask him when he gets back. I happen to believe her, right? I don't need overwhelming evidence to convict to have a belief that I think her story is legit. I look at her mannerisms, I look at her testimony, I look at the available evidence from the testimony, and I happen to support her. I happen to believe her. That doesn't mean I would say there's enough to convict criminally, right? Is that what you're saying? So if somebody just has a belief that she definitely had something happen to her, and I think she is convinced it is, was Cavanaugh, that doesn't necessarily translate to what they call the burden of the assumption of innocence. That would be more of a legal thing, would you say? I mean, there is no assumption of innocence in the social blogosphere, right? I mean, we try to give some kind of innocence to people, right? We don't want to falsely think that somebody did something wrong just because somebody has accused somebody. But if you listen to somebody's testimony and you evaluate that and say, hey, I've listened to them, I think they're full of shit, or I've listened to them and they seem credible, we can formulate a belief opinion upon that without a trial. Would you agree?
Of course. Right. I mean, I was having a similar conversation recently too. I think a lot of us were, where I pointed out we make these determinations every day, right? I mean, we can listen to two friends having an argument and decide who we think is at fault. And if we don't say to one friend, your burden, friend one, is beyond a reasonable doubt to prove to me that friend two is in fact responsible for this argument for whom you accuse them of starting. The reason that we use that construct in criminal law is because people's lives and their liberty is at risk. So it's a much higher standard. But the ability to assess credibility as between people is one of our most basic social functions.
Terrance, to follow
I'm sorry,
up on that.
I had to step away for a minute.
Well, that's okay. What are your thoughts on the Cavanaugh hearings, and who do you believe in that situation?
Well, I definitely don't believe Miss Ford.
Why not?
Well, like I said before, I will listen to a credible story and then have some evidence. Her story was so full of holes you could drive a Mack truck through it, and there was absolutely no evidence to include any of the people that she named. Either they call it or they weren't even there and said it didn't happen. So
do you believe something happened to her? Let's start not necessarily was it him, but do you believe that some event happened to her in the past that she is recalling rather than fabricating? Because I think that's an important distinction to make.
Well, yeah, on the side of on the side of caution, I would say something probably did happen, but the judge had nothing to do with it.
Okay, if that's the case, then are you denouncing people that have actually gone out of their way to criticize her and mock her and treat her poorly? Because if something has happened to her, then she's a victim. Whether she recalled it accurately or not, she is a victim of a crime. And yet I see a lot of people attacking her unfairly, and I'm not quite sure why that happens.
Well, just because you doesn't give you the right to victimize somebody else.
That's a tu quoque. I mean, I'm asking though, why do people like Trump even has demonized Ford, and other people have demonized her for coming forward, and yet the narrative should be that if something has happened to her, we should treat her as the victim and have some compassion, some empathy, have some sympathy, and then try to get to the core of the actual facts, right? I mean, that's what they would do in a court of law.
Well, you're absolutely
correct.
But
you can't demonize somebody for being a victim, and I think that's what I see from the feminist side that I do agree with. People do get victimized, and they get victim shamed, and I don't like that. I don't think that that's the society that we should have, and I think that it does prevent people from coming forth when they have been the victim of a crime. Would you agree?
I agree with this, that the Democrats, if they respected Miss Ford and they didn't want to see her victimized or shamed, should have brought this accusation up in the beginning, and it would have been handled behind closed doors. They would have got to the bottom of the accusation and either said it's credible or it isn't. And if it wasn't credible, it wouldn't never even made the light of day. But the Democrats held it to the very end to turn it into a shit show, which turned into a huge mudslinging fest. And you and I both know when you start slinging mud, sooner or later, some of it's going to hit the fan, and then everyone gets hit with mud.
That's a fair criticism, actually. Emrazz, how do you address that? Yeah.
Well, I think that I haven't seen 100%. I don't have a clear understanding of why the Democrats handled it the way they did. I know, for instance, that the reason they did not bring it up sooner was because Christine Blasey Ford specifically asked them not to. So in that respect, I understand why they didn't bring it up sooner. As to whether because she had specifically asked them not to, it should have never been disclosed. That may be the case. I'm willing to say that it seems like there was some mishandling there somewhere. I don't know where, but I think it certainly it lent to the perception that there was something strange going on with the timing, and I think it harmed her credibility. And so for her sake as a victim, I wish I and others had a better understanding as to why it played out that way. But with that being said, the response of, I think the Democrats shouldn't have put her in this position to be victim shamed is really kind of a dodge, because the question was, do you think that victims are afraid to come forward, as Blasey Ford was afraid, because they are shamed? And the Democrats are not responsible for the timing of every rape accusation, but nearly every rape accusation results in victim shaming. So do you believe that victim shaming is a reason why victims don't come forward?
Do I think that they don't come forward because they're ashamed?
Right.
I suppose that does have something to do with it. But also, on the other hand, maybe they don't have any evidence. Maybe their story is not good. And if you come forward and you don't have those two things, you're gonna find yourself with some criticism.
But why is it that you can justify shaming someone simply because of your assessment of their evidence? So, like, for example, if I'm hit by a truck but no one sees it happen, did I still not get hit by a truck?
People's lives are ruined by these accusations. And furthermore, when these accusations come up and
afterwards, it's nuts.
Give me a break. If that guy wasn't on a judge already, when that happens to a normal dude, he loses his job, he's living in the street, there are no social programs to help his ass out. Just stop there, okay? That's just ridiculous. And furthermore, when those kind of accusations come forward and there is no story to support it and there is no evidence, those people that bring those accusations should be sued into the Stone Age.
Sure. I disagree with that.
I agree with that. Emrazz, do you agree with that? Do you think if somebody gives false testimony in the fact that they have damaged somebody's life, even if that person doesn't go to jail, but if there's been a damage to the reputation by bringing false charges, they should go after them in civil court for damages? Because I certainly do, actually. I think
that's called libel. That's a cause of action that exists for monetary damages.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be pursued. Yes.
Do you think Miss Ford and everyone that made that all happen should be dragged into court and sued? Because I want to see that. I'll buy popcorn for that.
Well, that makes you seem like with popcorn, that's a very vindictive thing to say. I mean, libel is a cause of action that you bring.
You're damn right I'm a vindictive person. I am not a nice guy. Okay.
No, that's
when you
okay.
bring
I don't need you to be nice.
like that destroy people's lives, vindictiveness needs to come into play. Because if that doesn't happen, it's going to go on forever.
Right. So libel is a cause of action that allows you to sue for monetary damages where someone made a false statement about you and it led to reputational or monetary harm, and you can recoup the harm that was caused to you. It does require you to show that the statement was in fact false, which is why libel is not ultra common in cases of false accusation, because you'd have to prove that in fact the statement, that the claim was 100% false. And in a case like Cavanaugh, you'd also have to prove actual malice because he's a public figure.
No. In
So,
civil court,
you also have to prove
in
damages
civil
too, by the way.
court, the
I mean, there
burden
has
of
to be
proof
some
is
kind of
not 100%. You're out of your mind. It's in civil court. It's
I don't
much
think that's
lower
what
than
she
that.
said. I don't think it has to be 100%. What did you say? 100%?
She just said
Emrazz?
100%.
Did you? Okay.
you have to prove that something was false. Yes, that is a burden to meet the test. Libel.
Let me break in just real quick. There's a really large super chat that just came in, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. Jamie sent in $100 to say, Terrance, for whatever it's worth, I walk a perfect line between chivalrous conduct and ensuring equal contribution when dating. The key is heavy filtering up front and waiting to have sex as long as possible. This formula has resulted in having to fight dates off with a stick. Nice swords.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to be. Actually, I don't see a problem with that.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie.
So, I asked you this ahead of before we went live, Terrance, and there's some people earlier that mentioned, and I think it's worth asking again, and then we'll get Emrazz's take on it. But what is the difference between guys who are MGTOW and incels? Can you explain where there is a difference in the ideologies there?
Well, MGTOW are just guys that just they're done for the most part, and they're doing their own thing. Incels, I think, I think they want to, get involved and have women in their lives, but for whatever reason, it's just not working out, and it's building up some kind of resentment and bitterness in their life.
Now, when you say you're done, does that mean that you're not going on dates or plan to get remarried or anything like that? Like, what do you mean by when you say you're done?
I will never remarry again. No, that's
Okay.
that's never going to happen. I will never hand that kind of power to a woman over me again. And any men that are watching this, I suggest you do the same thing, because it's insane.
So, what about your social interactions with women? Will there be dates where you have somebody that's steady and just not have the like official marriage thing, or how does that work? You're not going to be tied down?
I can't really answer that right now. As it stands right now, no. But you never know.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. And Emrazz, have you had any kind of contact or interactions with incels? And what do you see the difference in the two ideologies are?
Well, I actually thought that Terrance's characterization of incels was pretty spot on. Obviously, incel is an involuntary celibate, so it's someone who desires to have interaction with women, but for whatever reason isn't successful, and it builds resentment. I thought that was a very spot on characterization. As for, probably not really fair for me to characterize MGTOWs.
Are we live?
Yeah,
Still?
we're back. Yeah, I think everybody just dropped. Yeah, we're back. We're back. We're good to go. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Hurricane.
Oh, great. Yeah. Hurricane weather. All right. Where were we? Okay.
Damn hurricane stuff.
We were getting towards the end of the and a half. We'll pick back up where we left off, and Steve do super chats and audience questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let us know when we're live.
Yeah. Good talk though, guys.
Yeah,
We'll
this is
get to it.
great so far, and I'm trying
Y'all
to.
going to be able to?
No worries.
You going to be
By
able
the
to
way,
hug it out afterwards?
yeah, you got. We ask tough questions here. This is not an easy place to come, by the way. But I try to be fair, and I ask hard questions to both sides. So I mean, I'm not like trying to play favorites here or anything. You guys are doing pretty well, though.
Is Emrazz back with us?
I don't know.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Whoa. Are you in an airplane, Emrazz? Okay.
I'm muted.
Yeah.
You are.
And we can hear you.
Dave, do you just
No,
want to
okay. Mute off.
start anew?
I'm saying mute on. That's not working. I'm fucking stupid.
Okay.
Can you still hear the sound?
No, not now. I wonder if it'll let you just create a new event. Why? Override.
Yay. Violence and technology.
Cool. Okay. So, okay,
Yes.
great.
Sweet.
We apologize for that. Our producer is in the middle of a hurricane, so ask. All right, Steve, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Wellington Smith for $10 asked, I thought I was MGTOW. I'm divorced, single, and voluntarily celibate and doing my own thing. But then I read their mission statement and affiliations. So no, no, no. What would you say the mission statement is for the MGTOW? In fact, I probably should read it myself, actually.
It's just doing their own thing. They've cut women out of their lives, and they're using that time and resources to take care of themselves. That's pretty much it right there.
It says, MGTOW men going their own way is a statement of self-ownership where the modern man preserves and protects his own sovereignty above all else. That's basically it.
Yep. Okay.
Johnny V, $5. What value is more important to today's society? Believe women or due process of law? Generally interested here. Love non-sex show. Thank you, Johnny. I think they're both. I don't see why they're exclusive. What about you guys?
Due process.
Emrazz?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I don't see how they're mutually exclusive either. I mean, when we're talking about beliefs of somebody, we can say we believe women and still give the men the due process of law.
Of course.
So, I mean, my example is this. If you had a best friend and they said, hey, I went out and bought a puppy today, are you going to say, show me the evidence you bought a puppy? No, you're going to generally believe them because you built up a rapport with them, right? You believe because they're telling you a story and you are making a decision whether that story is credible or not. We do this all the time, daily, with everything that, when we interact with people. It's a very social norm. So when you listen to somebody's testimony, there's nothing wrong with believing them and not saying to them, okay, show me all this overwhelming evidence. You can go just off the testimony because the testimony is evidence. It's just not empirical evidence, right? Mr. Cook Jr., $5. Has he ever heard of the fallacy of relative privation? And by the way, this is one of my favorite fallacies. Do you know what the fallacy of relative privation is? It's so applicable a lot of times, isn't it? Because I deal with it a lot, actually. Let me explain. The fallacy of relative privation is basically saying, why should we care about this when we have all the other things that we need to talk about? And I say this a lot in the whole Catholic child sex scandals, because I'm a big advocate of explaining to people that I think that the Catholic Church has a huge problem here and should be defunded. And I'm very against, child rape, right? But then people will say, well, what about this other thing? There'd be a too cool K fallacy. We have all these other problems that we need to deal with. Well, that's a fallacy because we're not talking about those other things. But I'm not sure how that was applicable here. But maybe that Terrance, you're saying that because of these other circumstances that have happened to you in your life, then this is why we have the MGTOW. Because it is based upon a lot of your personal anecdotal stuff.
This isn't just about me.
Fine, but...
Okay. Listen, first of all, I'm not running MGTOW. I'm not their spokesman. I'm just responding to. What I'm doing is a logical response to the way the world is right now in regards to men.
Emrazz, do you want to touch on that real quick?
Well, I also thoroughly enjoy. Oh, I can hear that now. Is that me? Is that?
I don't hear it
Sound
like
like
I did.
Oh, okay. The fallacy of relative privation, I think, could potentially apply to arguments where I don't know if it applies directly, but I feel like I could. Can you hear that?
Just you.
No.
Okay. All right. Cool. It's fine if it's only me that can hear it. But the idea that men are not privileged because they have these harms that are going on, and so why don't you pay attention to this instead of paying attention to the privilege? So although I'm not sure it corresponds directly with how the fallacy typically plays out, I can understand how it hears that way when you're listening to it.
I think you make an argument because the relative privation basically just people are saying, well, it's bad, but it's not as bad as something else, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's because it's relative, and privation usually is used in philosophy as being like, if what is good, what's the absence of evil? That's called the privation argument for good. But dim sum nim sung, $20 Canadian. Privileges are earned, not gifted. Okay. That might be
Except
true.
for that $20 that you guys just got.
What's that?
Nothing. Just nothing. Just being a dick.
Caitlin Chloe, $10. MGTOW. I don't know your name. It's Terrance Popp, by the way, and I don't care. Told you anyways, though. You're not worth caring. I hope you spend the rest of your life jacking off so no other woman is subjugated to your disgusting existence. Wow, that's pretty harsh.
Haven't heard that before. Oh my Lord! Thank you so much.
She has a way with words. She has a way with words.
Yeah, whatever. I get that all the time.
Johnny V, $2. Will replicants make human companionship obsolete? That's a whole different topic, I think, for a show. It's like sex
that whole sex robot thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is that what they're called? Replicants?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. And well,
Awesome.
some of them are pretty amazingly anatomically correct, from what I understand.
I think it could potentially have come from the mention of an artificial womb earlier in the conversation.
And go watch Blade Runner. Go watch Blade Runner if you're really interested in that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Sweet Heathen, $10. If you're mad at the flaws in the system, work to fix it. Why hate all women when they're not to blame? Society was built mainly by men of the past. We fought and died for a voice. Move forward, not back. Well, yeah, there's something to be said for that. I mean, what do you think about the women that have fought? And there has been deaths by the promotion of women's rights. I mean, there's not like they haven't been violence against women for them speaking out, especially in the foreign countries.
Well, first of all, I don't really care what happens in foreign countries. I only care what happens in America. Maybe in a little bit too, because those guys are pretty cool.
Why is that, if I can ask? I'm curious.
Well, I really want to fix what's going on here in America. And if women want to do their thing in other countries, then that's their deal. I don't care.
Okay. Mr. Cook Jr., $2. It's a wonder you were ever married. I don't know why not.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Nice.
I think it's a fair question to ask. Is more, do you think you would have been involved in the MGTOW movement if it wasn't for the experiences you've had with a bad marriage? Which, by the way, like passions go out to you. I haven't never had a bad marriage, but I've had bad relationships, and I know they can get pretty.
Well,
pretty
my marriage was great until I came home wounded from Iraq, and then basically she wrote me off and put a knife in my back, took away my kids, killed my dog, and I wound up living in the street. And then the system allowed that to happen. There was no compassion or support for me whatsoever. It was a rude awakening. And let me tell you, and if none of that happened, I wouldn't be doing this right now.
So you think the system is more tailored for and geared toward the woman than the man? And by the way, I happen to agree a little bit. I've been in the court system. I think that they do give the advantage a little bit more to the women.
Oh no, it's not a little bit more. I mean, statistically speaking, women get the.
Well, I can't say that. I mean, I have primary custody of my daughter, so I won. She just happens to be with her mom now, so it's not like it's ubiquitous where it's always going to be for the mom. It, generally speaking, I think on average, the mother's going to get possession more times than the men in the court system in child court. Is that true?
It's 85 to 15, but and that 15% that it goes to the men, 7% of those is uncontested. So when you back that percentage out, it's 93.7.
We should ask Emrazz about this since she's a lawyer. You could probably speak to that.
Emrazz is yeah, can you address that for court? I mean, would you agree though that the women do generally get custody over men typically in the court system?
Yes. Yep. I do agree with that.
Why is that the case?
And what's the reasoning?
Well, I think that first and foremost, I will say that I think there is some bias in the family court. I think it's one of the few institutionalized biases that exist in favor of women, and I disagree with it. I think it's also hyperbolized to an extreme degree because it's one of the few examples that exist. But I do think that there is some bias. I think there's considerably less bias than we typically hear, and I would argue that the foundation of that bias is still patriarchal in the sense that the reason that women have traditionally been awarded custody of children is because they were much more often stay-at-home mothers or primary caretakers of children during the marriage. And they are also viewed by many people in authoritative roles granting custody as having greater ability to take care of children or to be a primary caretaker. I don't necessarily believe that either of those things should be true. I do know that those are norms in our society. I also think that in the traditional marriage, much more frequently, the husband would have the opportunity to work a more demanding job, maybe less ability to care for children as a primary caregiver, unless they can also pay for full-time childcare or have a family member who can help. So whereas a woman would have already arranged those structures having been a primary caregiver, so logistically speaking, they may be able to provide for the court a plan that's more compelling. So, I mean, the last thing I'll say about it is, if it's true that 15% of men are getting custody as to 85% of women, I don't know that I disagree with that. I don't know the stats specifically, but that doesn't sound totally wrong to me.
It sounds feasible, right? I mean, it's in the ballpark. Yeah. I'm sure.
If then the secondary position is, and 7% of those are uncontested by female caretakers, I would be interested to know how many of the male, the female caretaker positions are uncontested. I would guess that it is significantly more.
Okay.
Steve?
One more super chat that just came in. Joe666. Shout out to Kyle's graphic design work. I noticed it a lot. Upset about not having relationship equals incels / I'm upset about a relationship equals MGTOW. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, I've talked to a lot of guys who went MGTOW who've never been in a relationship. They just saw what happened to their fathers, grandfathers, uncles, and they just said, you know what?
I can see that.
I'm not. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not going down that road.
No, I could definitely see them being, like, for example, if they have a father figure or a brother or somebody they know have been had those experiences, they might take it upon themselves to say, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, because it just sounds literally like men just want to be left alone. That's how I'm looking at it.
I don't know.
One more just came in. Instead of judging this man, we should listen to the deplorable way the system has treated him. Addressing his issues does not mean agreeing with his views on gender.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's had a shit system happen to him, and it's deplorable. And like I even said, I had compassion for that. I even said a while back, my heart goes out to him when it comes to that because I've dealt with something not to that degree, but we've all been there, right? And so, yeah, I totally accept that. Yeah, we should be, understanding that this shit happens, and there is a reason to talk about these things, the way the system treats people. There's no question about that.
Agree.
Okay. What I'm going to do now is let you guys kind of give any kind of closing remarks that you want to sum up the talk. Also, plug your channels, what you're doing, if you have anything coming up that people need to check out, and where they can follow you on social media. And Emrazz, we'll start with you.
Well, I think I'm not sure that I have an in summation on that conversation because I don't necessarily know what we just talked about. But I think what I would say is that I disagree with the position. I think MGTOW is sort of deceptively named because I don't think that it is men going their own way. I think it is men choosing to disengage from traditional relationship norms with women because they dislike women. Now, they have every right to do that, but I will close with one of my favorite MGTOW quotes from well-known YouTube MGTOW, Mr. Sandman, where he says that feminists are children pretending to be adults. And just because you're wearing the pants, honey, doesn't mean you can be a man. So I don't think that MGTOW is just men doing their own thing. I think it is a movement based on believing that women are manipulative liars who want to steal from men and are unable to provide for themselves independently. And they're no longer going to subject themselves to that kind of treatment. And so I had hoped that we could at least be honest about that being what MGTOW is. But nonetheless, I appreciate that we stayed mostly respectful. And I, as always, enjoy being with you guys. Thank you. You can find me at Emrazz, EMRAZZ on Twitter, or at Emrazz Official on Instagram.
So what do you say to that, Terrance, to that summation that it's just a bunch of men who are who think that women are vindictive and gold diggers?
Well, that is my assertion. I've been doing this since 2008. I've talked to roughly almost 6,000 individuals, most of them non-custodial parents, over 90% of them male, and half of those guys are veterans. And all of them were taken to the cleaners by the system as it stands now. I mean, we're talking losing their pensions, careers, kids, lives destroyed. And a lot of it's over some pretty petty bullshit. And I have to err on the side of the evidence that I've seen that women are manipulative, selfish biatches, and that's just the way it is. I mean, of course, not all of them are, but a large, so many of them are that it's too expensive to try to even look for the ones that don't fall into that category. I mean, you make one mistake, you're living on the street like me.
Okay.
And all you can really do is just laugh about it.
I've had bad experiences, but I mean, I got to tell you, the majority of them have been pretty good. I've had a lot of girlfriends, and maybe you just had a run of bad luck.
No, I made a video about it. I made a comedy of it, a video about it, turning a whore into a housewife can't be done. I tried it, failed. Yeah, I made a comedy video about it where I explained the whole thing to the dudes out there so they can go, hey, I'm not going to do that. And then, that's one less guy is going to get mauled. And a large portion of my videos are comedy education based because, through 33 years in the Army, I have seen thousands of dudes, just get mauled out there in the real world. They turn 18. Oh, I'm a man now. They step out there and all of a sudden they got child support, divorce. A lot of them are killing themselves. And it's just heartbreaking. And, if I could teach those young guys to avoid those pitfalls ahead of time all day long, I'll do it all day long.
Let me ask you this. Is it so much the women or just your choice in women?
That's a great question too.
Well, I know
we all have bad choices
all
in
it
women.
takes.
We know that they're bad choices, right?
Yeah, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But in today's day and age, all it takes is you to make that one bad decision, and it's over. It's over for you.
We have one more super chat real quick. Michael Pitts, $5. This dude is like Elaine's boyfriend in Seinfeld, developed a fetish for children's swords and some ragey self-pity. Okay. By the way, we try not to read the detrimental comments. These are creative, so.
No, that's fine.
That's what
you're a big guy. Yeah, we were talking about hate mail earlier, so he's not going to get upset by any of this stuff, right?
So
I wouldn't think you'd be a special snowflake, right?
The funny thing is,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is I used to think just like those guys out there until it happened to me.
Well, Emrazz let us know where you could find her in her social media. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on YouTube and Twitter, Facebook, all that sort of stuff.
Okay. My website is redonkulous.com. Even if you get close to the spelling, you'll go right to my site. I have a channel on YouTube, which is Redonkulous Popp, or even if you search YouTube for redonkulous.com, you'll get my videos. I really don't do much Twitter, and I have a presence on virtually all the other video streaming sites out there. They're all under Redonkulous or redonkulous.com.
And they're pretty funny. I was binge watching the other day. They're pretty good. They're funny.
Just because I'm curious, what is Redonkulous from?
Basically, it stands for if it's wrong and ridiculous, it's redonkulous, and I'm going to talk about it. And then if I don't offend you or piss you off, let me know, and I'll try harder.
Excellent. Well, listen, I think you did the job tonight. I think you succeeded in mission accomplished tonight.
Well, she kept saying, I was wrong on the stats and stuff. I mean, I'm looking at, some of the stuff here on men paying taxes, and I'm looking at one. I can't find anything on the United States, but I'm looking at one here in England where, men pay a majority of the taxes and women take up more taxes than they put into it. And I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to that in the United States as well, with the huge safety net that we have going on now. That's a lot of these single mothers are now, sucking on the tit of.
Do you know the answer to that, Emrazz? Off the top of your head?
I do not know the gender tax ratio of the United States. No.
I'll look into that and when I find it, I'll post the link to that answer in the description. I'll do a little bit of research later on. But guys, thank you for joining us. Oh, two more. Thanks, NS, for these informative discussions. You're welcome, AC. And you should take Dr. JP's advice and clean your take Jordan Peterson's advice and clean your room. Okay. All right.
And thank you, AC Castillo, $2. Thanks, NonSequitur, for these informative discussions. You're welcome.
I just read that, Steve.
Oh, did
Pay
you?
attention.
Yeah. Well, no, you did. Did you? Well, okay. Well, I zoned out there for a second.
It's okay.
I'm old.
All right. So I want to thank Emrazz and Terrance for joining us. This was a lot. Actually, this was a lot tamer than I thought it would be. I thought it would be a lot more brutal. I'm glad that it wasn't, though. This was very respectable change for what it was. So for two people to be such, go ahead, Terrance.
Well, no, she didn't get nasty, so I didn't get nasty.
She's not a nasty person.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's good.
We need to find him a really nasty feminist, because God knows there's a whole bunch of them.
Oh, come on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there are. Come on. Is that not true? Come on. There are some.
Steve wants blood.
There are some really radical feminists
Steve
out there
wants
that you just look at it and go, "What the hell are they doing?"
But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow for Debate Roulette. Remember, if you want to be a part of that, go to Discord and let us know ahead of time, and then we will also go to the suggestion box on Discord. If you have any suggestions for anything that you'd like to see on these the topic wheel, put that there, and we'll try to include those. So other than that, Steve, you got anything else before we close out?
No, I think this kind of just shows that people from very different positions can actually have civil dialogue once again. This is like the second time that Emrazz has had a great discussion on here, so thank you.
So we're going to go our own way until tomorrow, where we'll be back here at 8 o'clock.
So you'll be here for a while then. Bye.
Thank you, Terrance.
All right.
What is that move? What is that move there?
Non sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.